Hispano Suiza was a Spanish automotive and engineering firm, best known for its luxury cars and aviation engines pre-World War II. In 1923, its French subsidiary became a semi-autonomous partnership with the parent company. In 1946, the Spanish parent company sold all its Spanish automotive assets to Enasa. In 1968, the French arm was taken over by the aerospace company Snecma, now a part of the French SAFRAN Group. Hispano Suiza designed the first four-cylinder 16-valve engine in the car considered to have been the first sports car, the Hispano Suiza 45CR. History. Early years. In 1898 a Spanish artillery captain, Emilio de la Codra, started electric automobile production in Barcelona under the name of La Codra. In Paris, Delaware, La Codra met the Swiss engineer Marc Berkig and hired him to work for the company in Spain. La Codra built their first gasoline-powered engines from a Berkig design. At some point in 1902, the ownership changed hands to J. Castro and became Fabrica Hispano Suiza de Automacubed Vials, but this company went bankrupt in December 1903. Yet another restructuring took place in 1904, creating La Hispano Suiza Fabrica de Automacubed Vials, under Castro's direction, also based in Barcelona. 4 new engines were introduced in the next year and a half. A 3.8-litre and 7.4-litre four-cylinder and a pair of big 6-cylinder engines were produced. This company managed to avoid bankruptcy and its largest operations remained in Barcelona until 1946, where cars, trucks, buses, aero engines and weapons were produced. Other factories in Spain were at Ripoll and Guadalajara. In 1910 Jean Cazan competed with a Hispano Suiza together with works drivers Peleveridia and Zuccarelli, and in the Coupe des Voiturettes Boulogne and the Catalan Cup races he gained 2nd and 4th places respectively. France was soon proving to be a larger market for Hispano's luxury cars than Spain. In 1911, an assembly factory called Hispano France began operating in the Paris suburb of Levallois-Perret. Production was moved to larger factories at Bois-Colombes, under the name Hispano Suiza in 1914. World War I. With the start of World War I, Hispano Suiza turned to the design and production of aircraft engines under the direction of Marc Berkig. His chief engineer during this period was another Swiss, Louis Mazziger. Berkig's solution to building aero engines was ahead of its time. Traditionally, aircraft engines were manufactured by machining separate steel cylinders and then bolting these assemblies directly to the crankcase. Berkig's novel solution called for the engine block to be formed from a single piece of cast aluminum, and into which thin steel liners were secured. Manufacturing an engine in this way simplified construction and resulted in a lighter, yet stronger, more durable engine. Thus, Berkig's new construction method created the first practical, and what are commonly known today as, cast block engines. His aluminum cast block V8 design was also noteworthy for incorporating overhead camshafts, propeller reduction gearing and other desirable features that would not appear together on competitors' engines until the late 1920s. Another major design feature was the use of a hollow propeller shaft to allow projectile firing through the propeller spinner, avoiding the need for a synchronization gear, a feature used in future Hispano Suiza military engines. Hispano Suiza's aero engines, produced at its own factories and under license, became the most commonly used aero engines in the French and British Air Forces, powering over half the Alliance's fighter aircraft. 1918 Euro 1936 After World War I, Hispano Suiza returned to automobile manufacturing, and in 1919 they introduced the Hispano Suiza H6. The H6 featured an inline 6-cylinder overhead camshaft engine based on the features of its V8 aluminum World War I aircraft engines and a body designed by the American coach designers Hibbard and Darin. Licenses for Hispano Suiza patents were much in demand from prestige car manufacturers worldwide. Rolls-Royce used a number of Hispano Suiza patents. For instance, for many years Rolls-Royce installed Hispano Suiza-designed power brakes in its vehicles. Through the 1920s and into the 1930s, Hispano Suiza built a series of luxury cars with overhead camshaft engines of increasing performance. On the other hand, in the 1930s, Hispano Suiza's V12 car engines reverted to pushrod valve actuation to reduce engine noise. During this time, Hispano Suiza released the 37.2 Hispano Suiza car built at the Hispano Works in Paris. In 1923 the French arm of Hispano Suiza was incorporated as the Socia Copyright tar Copyright Frana section as Hispano Suiza, the Spanish parent company subscribing to 71% of the share capital. The French subsidiary was granted a large degree of financial and project independence, but the technical cooperation between the Spanish and French arms of the company was always closely maintained. Luxury car production was increasingly concentrated in France while the Spanish operations moved into the production of commercial vehicles. The mascot's statuette atop the radiator after World War I was the stork, the symbol of the French province of Alsace, taken from the squadron emblem painted on the side of a Hispano Suiza-powered fighter aircraft that had been flown by the World War I French ace Georges Snecma. In 1925, Carlos Bolster obtained permission to represent Hispano Suiza in Argentina. The agreement consisted of a phase in which the chassis were imported, followed by complete domestic production in Argentina. Thus Hispano-Argentina Fábrica de Automóviles Vials was born, for the production of Hispano Suiza motors and automobiles, and also the production of spare parts for other car, truck, and bus manufacturers. Spanish Civil War on WWII. In 1936, the French arm of Hispano Suiza was told to stop production of cars and turn solely to aircraft engines once again. At the time they had just introduced a new series of water-cooled V12 engines, and the Hispano Suiza 12Y was in huge demand for practically every French aircraft. However, Hispano was never able to deliver enough of these engines because of the outbreak of civil war in Spain, and many French fighters sat on the ground complete but for the engine. Meanwhile, the Republic of Spain conscripted Hispano Suiza's Spanish operations into war production of trucks, armored vehicles and weapons for the Civil War of 1936 to 1939. After the war, the company was severely affected by the devastated state of the Spanish economy and the trade embargoes imposed by the victorious Allies. In 1946, Hispano Suiza sold off its automotive assets to Enasa, the maker of Pegaso trucks. A development of the era were a series of 20mm autocannon. First the Hispano Suiza HS9, followed by the Hispano Suiza HS404. The 404 was licensed for production in Britain and equipped almost all RAF fighter aircraft during the war. Production was also set up in the US, but these versions never matured even though the USAAC and US Navy both wanted to use it in place of their existing .50 BMG weapons. A lesser-known success was the Hispano Suiza HS820, a higher-performance 20mm design that was also used in the US as the M139. A variation of the 20mm guns used on the Lockheed P-38 Lightning aircraft were produced by International Harvester. In 1970 Hispano Suiza sold their armaments division to Oerlikon, the HS820 becoming the KAD. In 1940, Hispano Suiza, together with the Spanish bank Banco Urcajo and a group of Spanish industrial companies, founded the Sociedad Iba Copyright Rica de Automóviles de Turismo. This led to Spain's first mass-production carmaker seat. 1950s Euro today After the Second World War the French arm of Hispano Suiza continued primarily as an aerospace firm. Between 1945 and 1955, building the Rolls-Royce 9 under license, designing landing gear in 1950 and Martin Baker ejection seats in 1955. The company's attention turned increasingly to turbine manufacturing and, in 1968, it was taken over and became a division of Snecma. In 1999 Hispano Suiza moved its turbine operations to a new factory in Bisons, outside Paris, using the original factories for power transmissions and accessory systems for jet engines. In 2005 Snecma merged with SAGEM to form SAFRAN. The marque may be seeing a revival in the automotive sector with the showing of a model at the 2010 Geneva Motor Show. Cars, the models H6B, H6E, Hispano Suiza Junior or HS26, J12 and K6 were made by the French division, the rest were all manufactured in Spain. Aircraft. Hispano Aviation Cubed NHA 43, Hispano Aviation Cubed NHA 100 Triana, Hispano Aviation Cubed NHA 200 Siltar, Hispano Aviation Cubed NHA 220 Super Siltar, Hispano Aviation Cubed NHA 300, Hispano Aviation Cubed NHA P300 man glider version of the HA 300, Hispano Aviation Cubed NHA 1109, Hispano Aviation Cubed NHA 1112K, 1942, Hispano Aviation Cubed NHA 1112M, 1942, Hispano Aviation Cubed NHS 34 biplane trainer, Hispano Aviation Cubed NHS 42. Hispano Barra Cubed N, 1919, Hispano Suiza E30, 1930, Hispano Suiza E34, 1935. Aircraft engines. Gallery. See also, Hispano Argentina, Bolster Molina. References. External links, company history at RIT site, French Hispano Suiza webpage, Hispano Suiza webpage, gallery of Hispano Suiza cars, Hispano Suiza truck and bus history, Hispano Suiza 12BA 1949 flight article.